How does a church or organization attract and develop talent? I'm Chuck from TechArts. Today we have the privilege of hearing Mateo Meares from PazNaz Church in Pasadena speak about his successes in creating spaces for developing young talent, attracting well-known artists, and serving the community by leveraging their facilities to the fullest. So Mateo, tell us a little bit about yourself and where your love for music began, and how did it shape your journey where you are today?
Yeah, I think with like a lot of people, my love for music began with Motown. The first time I heard those recordings, it was just different from every other music. There was so much soulfulness in the music. It just really spoke to me. It's the best pop music of all time. And so just riding in the car with my family, listening to old soul songs, and that's where it begun. And then music's just been kind of an ever present companion. I've always found myself kind of integrating life experiences through music, as a way that I experience the world and my life, and integrate the experiences I have. And for a lot of musicians, I think we kind of think and feel in music.
Yeah, well, you come from a family of musicians, which is really unique. And how has that background influenced the way you're approaching the building and building creative spaces at PazNaz and nurturing talent?
I'm married into. I'm from a musical family for sure, and I met my wife when we were 15 years old. She taught me how to play guitar. Her older brothers were, they're twins, and they were my favorite band at the time. Later in life, we started to write more music, and they started inviting us into writing sessions with them because they'd moved out to LA, and then we moved out to LA. I've always loved music because of the community that it brought. Somebody said to me one time that the greatest gift music brings us is community. Long story short, we're in a hospital room, and we had this idea that, maybe one day we could all live in a big house, share a house for a time, and make music, and so this kind of forced that conversation, and there's nothing to do in a hospital room, so I just got on Craigslist and I said, hey, there's this really neat house, and somehow we landed this great space, big house, and the bottom floor was the studio, and it wasn't that big, but it was really kind of the beginnings of what would become the studio space at PazNaz. And so where that took me in life was this opportunity of walking into a church. Somebody had put my name, and a friend had said, hey, I want to put your name in this. Would you consider being a music director at a church? We walked around the campus, and it was like, okay, church, this is more church, this is more church. But then we walked into the old choir room, which at the time was filled with all the junk that COVID brought. I don't know why. It just became like the storage room. They weren't doing choir anymore. And that was different, And so it really sparked the idea that this could be the bigger show. We felt like we were kind of growing out of this smaller studio space. The community definitely was growing out. And so the dreams of what kind of community could take shape, a musical community, an artist community, people who wanted to make the world a better place through music. Like, what does that community look like with a little bit bigger show? So that's kind of how that dream began.
What was, when they brought you on, what was your original vision for the PazNaz music and arts community or program there?
I feel like churches struggle for language, and a lot of time it boils down to the most simple algorithm of how do we get more people in the seats, and it's just this move outside of not faith in Jesus, but the forms of Christendom. And my heart really broke for those folks, and so I started to think of ways that you could create community with music. There was the opportunity to invite people into these experiences where they can make friends, where they can have beautiful experiences with a group of people. That experience could provide really meaningful community, even worshipful community, without it being in the form of a church service, something they could get caught up into. And yeah, so I feel like that's an overarching vision. And then it's really a missional space in the sense that I think good music attracts good musicians and people that find that meaningful. And then there's ways just to integrate people as they, hey, I love the sound of that record. I'm thinking about doing a record. What's the likelihood that we could do a record? I get those texts and emails and calls every day.
Wow, yeah. As you were turning your vision into reality, what kind of challenges did you face in the space, both not just the studio side, but the sound or the technology side of things? I saw some of the pain points, but maybe you could tell me a little bit about what you walked into for the big space, because it's a gorgeous room.
Oh man, it is a gorgeous room. Really, really beautiful room. When you were asking me the question, it made me think of when a doctor walks in and is it what's the level of pain at? One being that I would say mine was at a good 9, 10.
Ouch.
And the pain came from being in a gorgeous room, being in a space that a community at one time had invested so much time and money in, to realize, just all the architecture, all the intention, all the sacrifice, really. And we were in a space where the sound system was not serving anyone, and they really didn't have a good solution. For probably a decade, they had been looking, for a solution that would really meet the needs of the community, but also serve the space. It is a big, beautiful, amazing space. There wasn't a bid from a company of the dozens that they got. There wasn't one plan that came across that felt like it was worth the investment. It was worth the risk. And so they just kept waiting and looking and searching. So yeah, I think the painful point to me was, specifically in a worship service. I think you really are hoping that folks can lose a sense of self-consciousness, can lose a sense of, and really enter a sense of embodied thought, feeling, emotion, just like you would in a normal performance. The word you use that I love is immersive. I mean, it's an immersive experience in the sense that it takes you to that place. And at the same time, it's the sound system is like this ultimate servant, because it is serving this immersive experiencing while hoping that person kind of forgets about it. And we were just in a space where the sound system was not serving that space well, not serving the people well. And so that sense of connection that really great sound can foster was just, there was a profound kind of disconnection. And so if you felt like you were giving a really great performance, or you were giving a kind of all you had to make connection, you had to overcome something. You had to overcome the sound system, instead of the sound system being kind of a multiplier, to that sense of connection.
Well, all that to say, when I came in, I saw that you had the temporary speakers on the stage, and it was whatever solution could come up. You mentioned you talked to dozens of companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you hear about us first? I mean, what made you conclude that we were, the right pick for
Mm-hmm.
helping you with this system?
Yeah. Well, it was the community, that I talked about earlier that's kind of growing out, of our home, and then now the studio. It was somebody that had a project with you, and I said, hey, this company's really great. If you haven't tried them, you should just, and it's something that you hear, we'd heard it from all the other companies, what are the best companies around, and you get a list, and so I sent off, the request for a quote, and just kind of thinking, this is going to be another attempt and fail, you know. But when I got the plans and the quote back, I was like, wow, this is really something. This is really something that I feel like our space that could work with our space, could work with our congregation, and would be. What I loved about your perspective in talking to you was you always wanted the best for the space, and I appreciate that, because that's kind of the way my mind works. Is like, okay, what is the best solution? Because there's always a budget solution, there's always a to the nine solution, but what is the best? Which is I think about down to the science of it.
Big time.
You're doing the calculations, and you go, this is what really would work well, and you really were attentive to the things I was saying, the vision. Sometimes I wonder, when are we going to talk about this sound system? We're talking about approach and our needs and our kind of our hopes and dreams, and in the end that felt really it made it into the science. It made it into the calculations for the room, I feel like, and again, just feeling like you were listening, and in the end, like every decision, we when I was presenting this to the board that would inevitably make the decision, which is not always easy. It was those things that really took the project from being just another quote to something that I really felt like I could convey with a sense of authenticity, and also, a sense that, this company was different, and that it cared about the space, about our community, about what we were trying to do. So, yeah.
What stood out to you about the final design of the system, and how did that stand out to you?
Yeah. We had, we had several presentations, but also really didn't take into account the architecture, also like how we listen to music, but I think for me, when there wasn't really a company that we had worked with that I said, this is what I would this is ideal. And if I said, can we do a stereo field, a left and right array, and you guys, were like, all right, let's do it. Let's see if we can do it. And then you went away and came back with a plan that showed that it could be done. Not something that was just like, yeah, we'll do it, but we won't really have coverage from the left array across, or the coverage was sacrificed. Like, you guys were able to really get the design down, that made sense of the request. It wasn't just like I'm gonna show you this, and then hopefully you'll go with what we presented to you in the beginning. It really was about kind of that conversation about what we thought was, the collaborative. This is what we can do, and yeah. So I think that stood out a lot. The real solution making. So to get that kind of attention to detail really set TechArts apart.
Now that it sounds incredible, how's it impacted your ability to host events and performances, or even generate revenue from streams, revenue streams for the church?
That's huge, because I feel like one of the things that I just couldn't get my head around was that this wonderful place was only open 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week, and I just thought, well, why is it closed? Why can't we use?
That's crazy.
Why can't we use this space? So for me, I just always thought, there are ways to make this work for the church. A way not just to raise revenue for turning the lights on, but for actual, it costs money in some ways to make the world a better place, to feed hungry people, to give resources to folks in need. And we have these incredible spaces that, if made available, can generate revenue for the dream of, heaven on earth. So immediately, It Sounding Great generated tons of interest. We can't keep up, really, honestly. And a sound system is, to us, it's the linchpin for activating that space. So now you're saying yes to the things you want to say yes to, and that might be a benefit concert. So we're doing there was a church in Pasadena. Their community had lost over 60 homes, people in their community, and so we're able to say yes to a lot of things, which makes us able to, in certain moments, to say yes to something that we wouldn't make any money on, so that another community can benefit from our sound system.
Right. Wow.
And they have a great music team, and they're going to blow the doors off the place, and it's a fundraiser for their community. Yeah.
I'm excited. Well, I won't drag you out too long, but I have to say, my hope is that there are more Nazarene Church events there, since it's kind of the crown jewel, I think, of that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, brother.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It was so fun to sit down. I know we've had a couple of great lunches, and I thought, I can't wait to sit down with Mateo.
Yeah, it's really fun.
If this was helpful, check out our other TechArts videos, subscribe for more, and visit our website to see our latest projects and integrations.